Hey everybody, my name is Jamie Westbrook, in case you didn't know. I am attempting to do this again. I am a chronic overthinker, and I wrote out an outline of everything I thought that I should mention, and then I discussed it with my girlfriend because I kept doing all of these recordings and they didn't feel authentic and it didn't feel right. So with her guidance, she helped me to figure out the best way to do it, and it's just by being me, because that's the gift God gave me, is my ability to communicate my story. And I have to tell you up front that I've come to understand with this thing that I talk about, spiritual warfare, anytime I do God's work, especially on this level, I feel something that I've learned is called the spirit of oppression. And it feels like there's an elephant sitting on me. And I don't want to get out of bed, let alone try to be the functioning member of society that God has created me to be. So I need to qualify myself, and by that I'm saying that the things that led me to this point, this moment, are the fact that my parents got divorced when I was little. I had a disease related to muscular dystrophy right after that, and that was for a couple of years. And during that time that I had the disease, I was also molested. Fast forward, we moved from a small city to a big city. I started hanging out with older kids. I started smoking cigarettes, and my habits as a string of these events through my life, it became more evident quickly that I had mental health stuff going on, but nobody really knew that that's what that was at the time. It just looked crazy or emotional or anyways, it led me down a path where I was extremely promiscuous. And now that I know what I know about God, He taught me that first time I went to Flatirons that when two become one and you separate, it's like tearing of the flesh, because that was His design. We're only supposed to become one once, and that is not the case in this society, nor was it the case for me with my personal experience. Being shown sexuality in a way that was not God's intent through being molested a couple of times, and then taken advantage of by older men when I was a child, changed my perspective of what that looked like. I didn't even know what it looked like because I was never really told by anybody except society, magazines at every grocery store. I learned what it took to be sexy, and it was sex that made you desirable and wanted. And I was trying to fill a God-sized hole with people. I wanted somebody to love me unconditionally. And through that, I became a shell of a woman. And I could not tolerate my own emotions. I did not know at that time what the mental health issue really was. I just knew that I was miserable. And I kept doing the same thing over and over again, hoping to get a different result. I did drink alcoholically as a teenager. It wasn't an everyday thing, but when I drank to get drunk. And every time I drank, things that I really wish didn't happen happened. And fast forward, I had an abortion when I was 20, and then my drinking career really took off. And I was trying to fix what I'd done, so I got married and had a child and divorced within 2 years because I did not know God's plan for love, sex, and marriage. I didn't even know who God was. The God I grew up with was condemning, and I was going to hell because I couldn't stop doing wrong things. And loving me was conditional upon whether or not I could be what people wanted me to be, and I could never succeed at that. So after I separated from my husband, I met somebody that was an energetic match to me with zero self-esteem and a passion for partying. And after 6 months, I became pregnant again. I went on to have 3 children, but after that first one that I had with him, the fan just turned on, or the heater, I should say. I swore when I started this I wasn't going to let anything distract me or stop me, so I'm just going to keep going. This is really hard. Every time I do this, I feel like I'm reliving it because I feel it in my body again, and it's... You guys, it was awful. After I had my first baby, I started using cocaine. And I'm not going to lie. From the first time I used it, I'm like, where has this been my whole life? This is what I've been looking for. I finally feel good. Until 5 o'clock in the morning when I had the first anxiety attack that I'd ever had like that. And the horrifying shame and guilt. I had a 5-week-old baby there. And it continued. And the domestic violence intensified, and the drug use intensified. I had lost my job, because that's what ends up, that's what happens. We start losing things. And the next thing I lost was my kids. The first time, I believe it was July of 2006. I got them back in July of 2007. I started school in January of 2008. And I was staying sober by going to get mental health treatment. And then my mom was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And I thought, like, you guys gotta be kidding. You don't expect me to stay sober through that, do you? The woman that helps me with everything. So after she passed away, my addiction intensified, and I lost my kids for a second time. And then I kept relapsing after getting dumped for a 19-year-old. And I relapsed, and there came a day where I'd fallen asleep at a hotel, and I woke up and I thought, I lost my kids because I didn't pick them up from school. And then I looked at my phone and I saw that their aunt had picked them up and that their dad had them. And we had tried to make it work again. However, the domestic violence was still there, even though we weren't using together. And we got reported again, and I lost my kids again the night before Thanksgiving. Fast forward to March of 2010. Court didn't go the way I'd planned it, the way I'd hoped, and I was fighting with their dad, and I said, we're going to go get some stuff. I had a mental blank spot. Addicts understand this. It does not make any rational, logical sense why one would do that when there's so much on the line, but it's those times where you just don't want to feel that you go to the toolbox that you used to use that used to work because you don't have anything else. Needless to say, God has had his hand in it the whole time, and although I had attempted to use, it was not fruitful, if you will. It wasn't what it was supposed to be, and I woke up the next day. I couldn't breathe. I gave up my kids. I felt like I just gave up my kids for a drug, for an escape, and it just didn't make any sense. How could somebody do that? It led me to the 12-step rooms where they told me that I earned my seat and that God didn't make junk, which I wasn't sure that I believed. Because who could do such a thing? Nobody good would do that. I clung to that chair. I did not do it perfectly. I stayed sober for 3 years, but I continued to date. I was told you should stay single for a year, and I'm like, that's pretty funny. You don't know me. Well, when I got into another domestic violence relationship, I became willing to go to any lengths for my sobriety, and I finally stayed single when God finally got him to leave. And from there, I was single for a year and a half, and then I was chomping at the bit. I'm like, hey, God, you're taking too long. I'm going to find me a husband. So I did. I found somebody that was willing to wait for me for a month. So we got married after a month. He left after 4. I'm like, okay, God, what do I need to do different this time? He's like, wait on me. And I prayed, and I was very specific about what I wanted in my partner. And he said, all right, well, while I get this man ready for you, you got to clean house. You got to become everything that you want. I'm like, oh, crap, I have a lot of work to do. But one day at a time, through getting healthier internally, therapy, a lot of therapy, essential oils, nutrition, exercise. I went to a lot of therapy. And this last therapist helped me the most by far. She used something called Emotional Freedom Technique, EFT. You can Google it. You can do it yourself. It is the most effective thing that has ever treated trauma without having to discuss traumatic issues. And I worked through stuff. I worked through it. And I kept praying and reading proverb a day. That was all I knew to do. A proverb a day. And I had never cracked open a Bible prior to those 3 years. I was sober for 3 years. I finally stayed single. I got my step work done. And then after that, I was continuing to practice these principles in all of my affairs to the very best of my ability, which is not perfect. And then I did it again. I prayed for what I wanted, and then a guy showed up and started giving me attention and looking me deep in my eyes and making me feel like I was the best thing since sliced toast, and that's all a woman believes she needs. So when that didn't last for more than a month and I had broken that commitment to myself and to God again, I almost drank, and I was on my knees. Because if I drink, I use. If I use, I lose my kids, and it's all gone. I mean, it's gone. Gone. And those children did not ask to be born. So it's my responsibility to figure out how to clean this crap up so that they have a chance at some semblance of normalcy. They don't have to suffer because of my trauma. I was on my knees and God showed me. He's like, Jamie, you gotta stop doing what you do with men. Don't bat your eyes. Don't be dressing sexy. First of all, if they're looking at your body, can they see how amazing you are? No. All they think about is what they want. So I started changing and healing and working with my kids and communicating more, and God, he just blessed me. He blessed me over and over and over. And I started hearing that still small voice more, and I started researching how to make sure I was hearing him and I wasn't hearing voices, and I'm not a schizophrenic. I'm actually listening to the sunlight of the Spirit. Now that I'm clean and sober, I can hear it, and that I'm loved unconditionally, and I can walk in it, and I can find joy, and I can experience peace. And I know what serenity is today. And even on my worst day, they don't even come close to how awful I felt when my kids had to go stay with strangers, okay? There is not one thing on this planet that a drink or a drug won't make worse. And I want those girls out there that have experienced this, because I know there's lots of us. We're in good company. Marilyn Monroe, Angelina Jolie, Britney Spears, and there's another one, the redhead, Lindsay Lohan, all have the same diagnosis as me, and it's all surrounded around these relationships and attachment to our parents, or the lack thereof, and how our brains are wired differently. and we seek substances to help us tolerate the self-loathing from the choices we've made and the lives we've lived, and trying to find love from people, places, things, and chemicals, when the only thing that has ever fulfilled me, ever, is Him. He died for me. He gave His only Son for me. I would never give my son for anybody. And He experienced massive suffering on my behalf and for you. I didn't have to be perfect for Him to love me. He loved me right where I was. And He loved me unconditionally as He helped grow me into who I am today, into who you guys see today. You see somebody very different than who I was just a few years ago. 10 years ago, none of you would have ever even spoke to me. So that's why I do what I do. And this is just the beginning. So now I'm done. I'm done.